Stats in a Wrap, the podcast series from Eurostat. Today, we'll be showing how statisticians are using artificial intelligence
to do web scraping. A lot of people do web scraping.
We can quickly track which digital skills are most in demand.
These models are not 100% accurate. We have to improve all that.
The data are far better and much more useful for us. It gives us immediate information on what's going on the labor market.
Hello and welcome to Stats in a Wrap. I'm Jonathan Elliott, your host for this episode, and today we're going on, well, a bit of an adventure into the Wrap Cafe kitchen and beyond. We're going in search of the ingredients of official statistics, markets and farms, of course, but also foraging in forests of data and into the cutting edge of tech and how it measures our world. What's happening right now in the world of statistics is genuinely revolutionary, and as we think data is delicious, a good way to understand this revolution is through food. Now, let's just imagine you've got three ways to get your ingredients. First, you could grow everything yourself in your own garden. Tomatoes, herbs, vegetables. It'll be exactly what you need, but it takes ages and requires constant care and attention. Or you could head to the market. There you'll find good quality ingredients ready and waiting, but they're grown for everyone, not just you. Or you could venture out into the wild to forage. It's time-consuming. You need to know what you're looking for, and you have to cover a lot of ground. For decades, statisticians have been like those chefs looking for food in the markets and in their gardens. They've grown their own data through surveys custom-made for them, or they've shopped at the market using official registers of births, deaths, marriages and taxes. Very reliable, but not always quite what they need, and not always when they need it. But now they're heading out into the wild, huge world of the internet and all its mega data, just like foragers in the hedgerows. But this time, they're bringing robots with them. Thanks to advanced coding and advanced artificial intelligence, statisticians are learning to harvest data from places that were once unimaginable and to do it automatically, day and night, non-stop. They're teaching computers to scour the internet. It's called web scraping, to read job advertisements and spot patterns in millions and millions of data points, and to turn all of that raw information into genuine insight, into official statistics. It carries risks, of course. You have to know what you're doing. Some mushrooms are poisonous, remember, but these people make it their job to know. It's transforming official statistics in the most profound way, and today we're going to explore how it works, what it means, and why it matters to all of us. So let's begin our expedition into the fascinating world of, well, let's call it data foraging. And let me introduce our four chefs, or maybe our four foragers. They are Fernando Reis, who was lead of the Web Intelligence Hub project. Fernando, welcome.
Hi, Jonathan. Very happy to be here.
We also have Mészáros, who's a data scientist and methodological expert at Eurostat. He's particularly in charge of the Web Intelligence Hub and online job advertisement. Mátyás, welcome.
Hello, Jonathan. Welcome to everyone.
And alongside him, we have Vladimir Kvetan, who is a skills and labour market expert at Cedefop, the European Centre for the Development of Vocational Training. Vladimir, welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here.
That's fantastic. And Jacek Maślankowski, who is a data scientist and expert on web scraping job advertisements at both Poland's National Statistics Institute, Statistics Poland, and the University of Gdańsk, where he's in charge of online-based enterprise characteristics. Jacek, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello, Jonathan. Hello, everyone.
Right, well, let's just dive straight into the questions. Fernando, let me start with you. 10 years ago, Eurostat began exploring the possibilities of the internet and big data for official statistics. Can you just take us back to that moment? What did that opportunity look like to you, and how did you begin to explore it?
10 years ago, Eurostat created an internal task force that allowed colleagues here to dedicate most of their time thinking about big data, new data sources, which was quite an opportunity for us, I have to say. What we did at the time was run some pilots, some experiments, contacting some data sources, we tried to figure out what these new data sources mean for official statistics. Eurostat funded a project for the national statistical authorities to work on big data, running pilots and studies. Our purpose was to look at these pilots and with the pilots understand what do these new data sources, these big data mean in terms of IT infrastructure, what it means in terms of the skills required from statisticians, what are the legal requirements, the risks in terms of privacy invasion of individuals and so on. One of the sources that was explored by the national statistical authorities was online job advertisements. Another one that is very relevant nowadays was enterprises' websites.
Vladimir, let me bring you in here from Cedefop, which is the EU's Agency for Vocational Education and Training. It already had a wealth of labour force statistics to draw on. So what was the missing piece here? What gap were you trying to fill, particularly when it came to understanding skills?
At Cedefop, we are trying to bridge the world of work and world of education. And for this, understanding the skill needs is crucial. And last decade and even more, skills are central for development of EU policies. Cedefop was always central in this discussion by development of labour market and skills intelligence, but we were mainly using proxies for skills, like occupation or education levels. We reached out to online job advertisement to see real skills that are needed by employers.
Fernando, from your position at Eurostat, what was the challenge you were trying to crack? Gathering information from the web sounds straightforward enough, but making it work for official statistics, that's quite a different matter, isn't it?
Getting content from the web, it seems a rather simple thing. I mean, to do web scraping, a lot of people do web scraping. It doesn't seem very complicated to do. What is important for us is actually the context in which we are doing it, which is in official statistics. It's not only getting content from the web and applying some algorithms. We need to do it in a systematic way, in a consistent way. It's not for doing a study. If we're going to use web to produce statistics, we need to do it in a regular way, in a comparable way. So if we make changes over time, we decide to do it differently, change algorithms, then it's not comparable to statistics anymore. The Web Intelligence Hub is our solution, a way of building a statistical infrastructure that helps us do a proper use of content from the web and getting data that is appropriate to produce official statistics.
Vladimir, I'd love to hear about how all the different players came together on this. You had Cedefop, Eurostat, national statistics officers, each bringing something different to the table. How did that collaboration actually get started?
For me, this last 10 years was absolutely great. It was lots of collaboration, lots of exchange. The central was to develop something useful and boost this inter-organization cooperation. Cedefop started to work on the job advertisement in 2015, where we launched a small feasibility study, and we were just trying to position ourselves on the market those days. We were trying to understand if we really can bring some information on skills to our analysis. So there was really like small project. It worked for 5 countries. We were asked by Eurostat if we can source them with some data. So we were absolutely happy to pass the data. We managed to get Fernando to one of our workshops in Milano, where we have showed him like what we have. So he was pretty impressed. So then we started to work together. So it was really a sequence of fortunate events.
Well, indeed, it was clearly meant to be. Now, let's step out onto the streets of Berlin to find out a bit more about how you, our listeners, get their jobs, their gigs, their side hustles and their passion projects in all their variety, online and offline.
So I found my job via a friend, and she sent me a link, and then I applied. And from there, I started to work, and now I also applied other friends from me, and I sent them also the link so they could benefit from my work too. So yeah.
Jacek, let's just talk about the sheer scale of what you were dealing with here. Millions of job postings pouring in from 500 websites, and none of this data was designed with statistics in mind. Can you tell us about those early challenges, making sense of that Niagara of raw, unstructured information?
At the early stages of the project, the main challenge was changing the way of thinking about official statistics. So instead of relying only on questionnaires and predefined tables from administrative data sources, we had to show that methods like text mining, like natural language processing, like machine learning, can also support official statistics in a reliable way. So another key challenge was methodological and related to the quality, because we were working with millions of unstructured job postings. So it was essential to agree on common methods and quality standards at the international level. So this exchange of views helped us build a unified framework and ensure that results are comparable across countries. And back to your question, from a practical point of view, handling the data was also complex. Yes, because it was necessary to develop good deduplication methods to avoid counting the same job advertisements multiple times, and to develop also accurate machine learning models to classify vacancies according to standard classification.
Mátyás, from your perspective at Eurostat, when did you start to feel that this thing was really going to fly, it was going to work? When did it stop being an interesting experiment and start looking like something that really could genuinely deliver?
We see the constant development in the field of IT, especially in the distributed computing and storage in the cloud, which makes possible to download and extract information from thousands of websites at the same time. This allows us to process millions of job advertisements using AI and machine learning models to extract data about the labor market in a very short time. When we started the data collection for all the EU countries, and not just for a few languages, it was a turning point that it can be more than an experiment. Still, we face the issue that the models are not 100% accurate to extract the correct information. We are continuously working on this, and we have a feedback loop that measures the quality of the extracted information, in order to use later this data for official statistics in the future.
Fernando, people listening might say, well, this is all very exciting and amazing, but what difference does it actually make? What's the practical payoff? How is the data from the Web Intelligence Hub being used to shape policy and help the public?
Eurostat released a few months ago experimental statistics on the job vacancy rate by region and occupation, where online job advertisements data was used to break down job vacancy statistics by these two variables. This makes really a big difference because the situation in the labor market is not necessarily the same in the whole country and may be different from region to region. Also, knowing the job vacancy rate by occupation is very important for policymakers and for citizens. If you're considering changing your career or to return to education, it is important to know what kind of jobs you're going to find in the labor market. Eurostat also released 1 year ago new indicators on digitalization, in particular, the percentage of online job advertisements that are targeting digital occupations. This is very important for us to know if we are getting ready for the technological advancements that we see coming. And why do we need online job advertisements for this? Because we need very detailed information by occupation and very large data sets to produce these statistics. We do have an immense detail in this data. We have around 300 million job advertisements right now. We classify the advertisements to the around 400 different occupation classes of the most detailed level of the statistical classification. Normally with surveys, we don't get this level of detail. From online job advertisements, we also extract information on around 1,000 different skills that are demanded. But how do you show this information? What we normally do doesn't really work. Fitting 1,000 skills and hundreds of occupations in a statistical table or a statistical graphic would just make it too large to read. It will have way too many lines, way too many bars. So Eurostat found an alternative way for people to explore this detail. In the top trending skills web application available in Eurostat website, we can select a particular country, a particular occupation, and see what are the main skills that are being required in online advertisements. And at the same time, see how these requirements have changed over time.
Well, it's time to step out of the cafe now and go for a stroll on the streets of Berlin to hear from people about their search for work on the internet.
To look for my job, before I used to ask a lot my friends, like, do you need someone that could work here? I do not do that anymore. What I'm doing right now, my main two searching platforms are LinkedIn and Stepstone. And I'm every day checking the job opportunities there and apply wherever I could be a good match.
Vladimir, one thing that strikes me is the speed question here. Traditional surveys, of course, take months and even years, and skills are moving so fast right now. AI, digital transformation, prompt engineers, where there used to be coders. Everything's very, very fast moving in the world of tech, of course, but not just tech. Does this give you something closer to a real-time picture of what's happening?
Fernando didn't mention that we managed to produce together one of the fastest indicators in statistics. I would like to mention our Skills OVAT, which stands for Online Vacancy Analysis Tool for Europe. First of all, the data are far better and much more useful for us because it gives us a clear indication and immediate information on what's going on the labor market. For instance, we are looking at digital and green transition, where we can get dispersion of green skills across various occupations and also digital skills, because many people they are thinking of digital skills as something for the high-tech ICT people, but suddenly we see that there is lots of requirements for having digital skills for occupations which are so-called non-digital. This is where we believe that this information is highly useful for policymakers to understand what's going on. Talking about feeding back to statistical communities, the fact that employers are advertising or requesting skills which are new to the labor market, we can understand new skills or new occupations, new job titles that can feed back enriched taxonomies like European taxonomy for skills and occupation ESCO or to international classification of occupations. These feedback loops are highly important also to make taxonomies up to date.
Jacek, listening to everything we've heard today, I have to ask the big question. Are we looking at something here now that could eventually replace traditional ways of gathering data for statistics? Or is this really about adding a powerful new tool that sits alongside what already exists? So are we looking at a revolution or just the emergence of a really valuable companion?
In my opinion, web scraping should clearly be seen as a complementary technology, not a replacement for traditional surveys. Surveys like the labor force survey or job vacancy statistics, they are based on strong methodologies and provide lots of information that simply cannot be found online. So, going back to your question, the main strength of web data is its detail and timeliness that already has been discussed by Vlad in this interview, but I would like to concentrate right now on the weaknesses, why we cannot replace, for example, traditional questionnaires with web data. Because at the same time, web data has limitations like not all employers post vacancies online. Many important characteristics of workers or enterprises are not available on the web. And it means that it's really difficult to replace the traditional questionnaires with just web data. That's why, in my opinion, it will have a complementary role, not a replacement role.
Fernando, looking ahead now, you've got large language models and all sorts of new technologies coming along fast at your fingertips. What role do you see these playing in the next chapter of this work?
The main challenge we have when we are using content from the web is natural language text. The archaic methods that we're using, they're based on matching text that we find in the job advertisements with terms and then link to the classification that we want to use. Like, for example, we have job titles and we need to say which job title corresponds to each occupation, right? So we have to maintain this. These archaic methods match words, sequences of letters, but they don't take into account the context of a word, the sentence in which it appears. Let's imagine job title, prompt engineer. And we don't have it in our list of terms, so we need to introduce this. Large language models, they capture part of the semantic of this meaning, and it may actually understand what a prompt engineer is, even if it's not in our list. So large language models bring a lot of advantages. So we started last year to use language models to do the classification. And indeed, we obtained much better results, much higher accuracy in the classification. So, and we are hoping that still this year, we're going to release a new variable on occupation using these language models. What we need to do, in fact, is be attentive, pay attention to these developments and explore how we can use these technologies to improve the extraction of the data from what we find on the web.
Jacek, I want to come back to you on the value of all of this. We've been talking about a relatively new approach, and yet policies built on this kind of evidence could affect millions of people. Just persuade us, how confident can we be that web scraping is solid enough to build official statistics and then build policy on top of that?
The main value of web data for official statistics is the much higher level of detail and timeliness it provides. Yes, so it allows us to break labor market information down by several different attributes like occupation, region, specific skills, which is especially important for fast-changing areas like digital skills or ICT here. But another key advantage is agility, which means that because web data can be processed much more frequently than traditional surveys, it means that policymakers can access up-to-date evidence without waiting months or years for new results, like with traditional questionnaire. So this supports more responsive and evidence-based policymaking at the EU level. And a good example is the demand for ICT specialists discussed here today. So by analyzing online job advertisements, we can quickly track which digital skills are most in demand and how this demand evolves over time. And what is the most important, when combined with traditional surveys, it gives a much clearer and more timely picture of labor market trends. So this is the value, really the value added to the official statistics.
Well, it's time to step out of the cafe for a minute again and talk to Europeans and visitors who are adjusting, as many of us are, to the world of automated job searching.
I do believe that artificial intelligence can help me with my new job, and I'm actually use it daily for the job search. I settled an AI filter for job applications. I told ChatGPT everything about me, my working experience. I uploaded my CV. I said everything what I'm looking for, what's the most important for me. And then I said literally to ChatGPT, if you see this, and that, tell me to apply, to skip, or to apply with a caution.
Mátyás, I want to ask you about quality. When you're working with web data that's messy, varied, and constantly shifting, how do you make sure what comes out at the other end is reliable?
When we start from the web, we have to make sure that we are collecting the correct information. We check regularly that the number of pages downloaded from a given website is similar to what was on the previous occasion. It can be that the website disappears and a new one shows up. From this reason, we have to do regularly landscaping. It means that we have to have an overview which are the websites that can provide us information on a given subject and which are the most important one to target for collection. If we have those websites and the number of downloaded pages are stable, still we have to check if there is a big changes in the extracted data. Sometimes the structure of a given web page is changing, and we have to continuously follow up all those changes to extract the correct information. When we apply the machine learning algorithms or using large language models to extract the data, we are checking if there is no relevant information left behind. We are regularly checking, for example, in the case of the job advertisement, if there is no big discrepancies in a given area or given profession compared to the previous period. In this case, we are sure that the data extraction works correctly. In case we see that some area is over or underrepresented, we go back to the source of the data and check the information. It can be that a company opens a new factory, and this is the explanation of the outlier case. If needed, we update the machine learning models and we repeat data extraction to have the correct information.
Fernando, as we begin to wrap up, this has clearly been a successful project. But if you can do this with online job advertisements, there must be other areas where the same approach could work. What do you see on the horizon?
For the future, real estate prices is on the horizon, and I have some hope that the work that we have done in the last years, in the last 5 years, with the setting up this web intelligence hub, now is going to put us in a position that we can actually support national statistical authorities and the development of price statistics, in particular for these particular products. Again, using surveys is not the most appropriate method. So we have this on the horizon, and there has been other applications, enterprises, websites, which needs to continue progressing. I'm hoping with the support of the Web Intelligence Hub and the platform that we have built. Jacek already mentioned timeliness. Sometimes the traditional methods that we use to collect this business data, like turnover, assets, investment, and so on, it takes a very long time to reach us. So you have everything to get to produce statistics. On the web, in particular for very large enterprises, for multinational groups, you can find very quickly business data, new financial figures for these enterprises. So these are the several areas and the types of web sources that we have on the plate.
Fernando, one last question. You and your team and this project, they don't exist in a bubble. This kind of work must be happening elsewhere in the world as well. How has what you've been building, how has what you've built here been received by the global statistics community? Have they been knocking on your door?
Yes, even recently we had a meeting with statisticians from statistical authorities in Singapore about using also online job advertisements just by chance. I have the thing, I may be wrong, but I have an idea that at least in the European statistical system, we are pretty advanced in using this source, at least in official statistics, I mean. But when it comes to the private sector, that's a different story. And we have many private companies that use content from the web, and there is a whole sector, a whole data sector based on that. But in official statistics, I would say we have been leading.
Yes, that would seem to be the picture in many fields outside this particular area too. We keep coming into that in the European statistical system, and it does seem to be a global leader when it comes to official statistics. Now, unfortunately, we have run out of time, and I must thank our contributors today who have been really generous with their insights and their words to help us understand this cutting-edge field. It's really very exciting. Fernando Reis, who was the lead of the Web Intelligence Hub project, Eurostat Innovation Project, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jonathan. It was my pleasure.
It was indeed a pleasure. And Mátyás Mészáros, also at Eurostat, a data scientist and methodological expert, thank you very much for your contribution today.
Thank you very much to be here.
And at Cedefop, Vladimir Kvetan, thank you so much for telling us about your work as a skills and labour market expert there.
Thank you very much.
It's been great to hear from you, Vladimir. And last, but certainly not least, Jacek Maślankowski in Poland. Thank you very, very much for your help and your perspectives, both from Statistics Poland and from the perspective of the University of Gdańsk. Really good to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, all speakers, for this interview today.
Thank you very much, everybody. If you've enjoyed Stats in a Wrap, don't forget to follow us on the streaming platforms where the show can be found on Spotify, Apple and YouTube, and share our adventures with family and colleagues. And if you'd like to know more about the topics covered in this podcast and practically every aspect of statistics in the EU, you should make your way to Eurostat's amazing educational resource, Statistics Explained. And of course, come to the Wrap Cafe for the next edition, in which we'll be finding out how the EU's statistics community is measuring the almost unmeasurably complex world of hazardous chemicals. Often critical to the stuff we need at work, at home, in almost everything we touch, from food to medicines to plastics and paint, these substances are vital for the smooth running of our economies. Yet, we must contain them, and only statistics will allow us to properly understand them. Join us then. But for now, goodbye.